They told us she was dying for treason. The truth was she was dying for an annulment. History remembers her last words. The real story is defined by the words she was forbidden to speak. Imagine the hush, the absolute, suffocating silence before the swift foreign blade ended a queen. You stand before the crowd, prepared to defend your innocence, but the script is already written by your executioner. She tore apart the church for him. He dismantled her reputation to secure his next marriage. You are standing in the inner ward of the Tower of London, beneath a pale May sky, watching the wooden scaffold rise. This is not justice. It is a meticulously managed political theater where every actor is forced to follow a script penned by the king's ambition. The air is thick with controlled fear, the silence broken only by the shifting weight of the few privileged witnesses allowed to attend the unprecedented fall of a queen. Anne Boleyn, once the dazzling source of revolution, is now the necessary sacrifice for continuity. This spectacle must appear dignified, but beneath the surface, the performance is raw and chillingly absolute. "I am come hither to die," were the words she offered to the assembled crowd on May 19th, 1536. But these few, careful lines, delivered with extraordinary grace and unsettling composure, were merely the required prologue to her end. They were not the passionate defense she had prepared. They were the concession power demanded. Anne knew her survival lay not in protesting her innocence, an act that would guarantee a brutal end, but in submitting to the sovereign narrative, praising the very Lord who condemned her. The cost of defiance was too high. The charges levied against her, adultery, incest, and the ultimate crime of high treason, are viewed by nearly all modern historians as the political fabrications of a regime desperate for a new queen. Yet, as she stood elevated above the hushed observers, Anne did not protest the gross injustice. Her final address was restrained, a public endorsement of King Henry VIII as a gentle and sovereign lord, asking for prayers. This chilling compliance was not a sign of guilt, but a profound understanding that even in death she could not compromise the king's authority. Tudor protocol mandated that the condemned offer no statement that could stir public sentiment or cast the smallest shadow of doubt upon the monarch's infallible judgment. Anne had indeed prepared a contrasting speech, one emphasizing her unwavering faith and detailing her wrongful imprisonment. But the Constable of the Tower, William Kingston, ensured every word spoken was vetted, controlled, and safe. The Queen understood she was being watched, her performance monitored until the very final breath, making her silence a testament to the suffocating reach of state power. The scaffold became less an instrument of punishment and more a calculated device of control and political legitimacy. Her silencing, this enforced theatrical compliance, reveals the depth of the king's needs. Henry VIII required not only Anne's physical removal, but her complete, dignified surrender to the narrative of justice. The truth of her inner turmoil, the burning resentment and fear, were expertly buried beneath a facade of regal resignation, ensuring that the king's image of mercy remained untarnished, even amidst such cruel condemnation. But the choreography of her demise included a deeply unusual detail, one designed to project a facade of mercy while maximizing symbolic control. Why would an English king summon a foreign executioner armed with a delicate French sword to behead his English queen? This rare historical occurrence signaled that Henry was concerned not just with the outcome, but with the specific presentation of Anne's downfall. The choice was calculated, symbolic, and profoundly political. Instead of the common English axe, a crude, often unreliable instrument that frequently led to gruesome, prolonged suffering, Henry arranged for the execution by sword. The swordsman, often identified as Jean Rambaud, was summoned from Calais, a region then under English control. He was known for the swift, precise, and virtually silent method of decapitation favored for nobility in France. This decision was extraordinary, interrupting centuries of traditional practice for the sake of presentation. You must imagine the scene, the dull, heavy thud of the axe replaced by the lethal glint of the sword. The choice of the French blade carried a deliberate message. Henry wished Anne's death to be perceived as dignified, almost surgical on the surface. Yet, this veneer of refinement cloaked a cold, strategic aim. The king, who had destroyed 5 men and his own sister-in-law to condemn Anne, now sought to distance himself from the brutality, hinting at a magnanimity he did not possess. This foreign intervention was vital for Henry's self-image. By choosing a method associated with continental nobility, he could suggest Anne's end was a matter of statecraft, not personal cruelty. He was appearing merciful, even as he ordered the downfall of the woman for whom he had fractured the entire established church structure of England. But this wasn't the end of the calculated theatricality. Contemporary accounts suggest Anne was keenly aware of this peculiar arrangement. Sir William Kingston recorded a remark that reveals her acute, dark humor and her recognition of the macabre drama. "I heard say the executioner was very good, and I have a little neck." Her words were heavy with gallows wit, demonstrating an unsettling lucidity just hours from her fate, confirming her place as a protagonist in a tragedy where she had no control over the final scene. The executioner was compensated lavishly, receiving a sum equivalent to a year's wages for many nobles, a testament to the high value placed on his required precision and silence. Sources suggest he practiced tirelessly within the tower's courtyard in the days leading up to the final moment, honing his strike for absolute certainty. The fee was not simply for a service. It was payment for the guaranteed swiftness needed to sanitize a political assassination, ensuring no chaos or prolonged suffering marred the king's narrative. The presence of the French executioner was fundamentally symbolic. It was a gesture designed to polish the tarnished image of Anne Boleyn's political death, cloaking the raw vengeance in the guise of aristocratic refinement. Though the blade itself was foreign, the chilling motives driving its employment were unmistakably and strategically English. It signaled to the European courts that Henry remained in complete, powerful control, even over the emotional spectacle of a queen's tragic end. The sun rose on May 19, 1536. Casting a weak light across the Tower Green. Anne Boleyn, having confessed and taken the sacrament before dawn, spent her last hours in the Queen's lodgings, rooms once symbols of her power, now cold and silent. The psychological tension was immense. She had prepared for death the previous day, only for the sentence to be inexplicably postponed. Sorry from Sir William Kingston confirmed Anne had expected to be dead by noon on the 18th. When no messenger arrived, she reportedly broke into nervous, uncontrollable laughter. This delay was not logistical. It was a psychological tool, a refinement of cruelty designed to magnify the tension and amplify the spectacle of her eventual, inevitable downfall. The uncertainty was a corrosive force. Shortly before 9 o'clock that morning, Anne was escorted to the scaffold, wearing a gray damask gown over a crimson kirtle. The choice of red beneath the sober gray was noted by witnesses. Crimson traditionally symbolized martyrdom in certain traditions, a subtle visual claim to innocence. Her hair was drawn back, exposing the neck, prepared for the foreign blade. Knock as she ascends the steps, noticing her composure, the final, ultimate act of regal control. The crowd gathered was small and carefully vetted. High-ranking nobles, court officials, and a few selected citizens. The common populace was held at bay. This was meant to be a controlled event, not a chaotic popular spectacle. The quietude was enforced. Eyewitness accounts universally describe her poise, noting the resigned dignity in her movements. She addressed the small assembly calmly, repeating the required narrative. "Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, for according to the law and by the law I am judged to die." This was the submission the king demanded, the final, humiliating acquiescence to his absolute authority. Notably, the queen made no assertive protest of innocence during this public address. To have done so would have been interpreted as an unforgivable act of final defiance, a treasonous challenge to the crown's judgment. Condemned traitors were expected to submit humbly to their fate, cementing the narrative of state necessity. Her silence here was a calculated necessity to ensure the swiftness of her passing. After concluding her brief speech, she knelt, her ladies weeping nearby. She then blindfolded herself, a private act of closure, and prayed, whispering the ancient lines, "To Jesus Christ I commend my soul. Lord Jesus, receive my soul." The air grew heavy, the assembled nobles frozen in their quiet deference to power. This was the moment of ultimate surrender. What came next changed everything. According to the chronicler Lancelot de Carl, the final moments were orchestrated with deceptive speed. The French executioner, his sword concealed, called out suddenly to an assistant, diverting the Queen's gaze. As Anne instinctively turned her head towards the unexpected sound, the swordsman stepped forward from his hidden position and carried out the sentence in a single, silent stroke. The precision was chilling. Accounts suggest Anne Boleyn died in under 45 seconds from the final command to the conclusion. There was no sound but the rustling of clothing, a momentary gasp from the crowd, and the muffled sobs of her attending ladies. The swiftness was the final signature of Henry's control, ensuring the spectacle ended before the fear could turn to popular dissent. Her remains were handled with remarkable haste. There was no official ceremony, no royal procession befitting a Queen of England, regardless of her condemnation. Her body was placed unceremoniously into an empty arrow chest, a wooden box meant for military supplies, and interred quickly in the nearby chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. The execution was not simply an act of justice, true or false. It was a carefully managed political ritual designed for internal and external consumption. Every single detail of that morning was scrutinized, timed, and orchestrated for the maximum political effect. The Queen's end was undeniably swift, a superficial mercy, but it was never truly merciful. It was ruthlessly calculated. Indispensa's downfall was more than a personal tragedy. It served as a brutal public lesson in the fragility of power when faced with absolute royal will. In striking down the Queen, Henry VIII redefined the reach of the English monarchy, demonstrating that even those who wear the crown can be shattered when ambition eclipses law. You are left to reflect on the nature of this history. Her fate serves as a stark warning. No rank, no title, and no history of devotion guarantees safety when statecraft demands a sacrifice. The line between absolute glory and catastrophic doom can be severed in a single, precise stroke of the sword. The silence that followed her death was the sound of a king consolidating his absolute rule. Did her calm acceptance on the scaffold testify to an inner grace, or was it the ultimate act of calculated self-preservation, ensuring the clean, quick death she desired? History invites us to examine the subtleties of compliance under duress. As witnesses noted, the final audible words were a whispered prayer commending her essence to a higher power. To Jesus Christ I commend my soul. Lord Jesu, receive my soul. This video is created for educational and historical purposes. It examines themes of power, corruption, and human conflict without depicting explicit or graphic events. The focus is on the mechanics of political control during the Tudor era. If this story made you reflect on the chilling precision of power and the fragility of human dignity under tyranny, you're welcome to continue the journey with us as we walk further into history's shadows.